Welcome to the UN Brief. Today we interview Louis Rosenberg. He is the CEO of Unanimous AI. He is also a pioneer on research in augmented reality and virtual reality. We spoke about the Metaverse, AI, and much more. Thank you for watching the UN Brief, and don't forget to subscribe. But there is a meeting on the 3rd of March by the Swiss Society on all things related to virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, and the Metaverse, of course. That's the big topic. So are you going to be here, or are you going to do it virtually from California?
No, it's virtually from California.
Okay, but I won't miss it because, of course, you were one of the pioneers of virtual and augmented reality. And now you are the CEO of Unanimous AI. Because I think a lot of people are not aware of how far back we go on trying the Metaverse, creating.
Yeah. So the Metaverse goes back a long distance. I got involved in 1991, so a little over 30 years ago. I was a graduate student at Stanford University, focusing on virtual reality and immersive worlds. And I was lucky enough to get a part-time job working at NASA in their virtual reality lab. And so my very first experience in '91 was working with virtual reality headsets, actually looking at the basic parameters of how you model interocular distance between your eyes. And it was really that experience in virtual reality that made me feel like this technology is pretty amazing, but I feel really enclosed. And I said, it would be really amazing if I could take the power of virtual reality and splash it all over the real world. And so I pitched that idea to the US Air Force. And so in 1992, I had a fellowship from the Air Force to build what became called the Virtual Fixtures Platform, which was this is before the word augmented reality even existed, but it was really the first interactive augmented reality system that allowed people to reach out and interact with real and virtual objects in the same environment, and it was an amazing experience. We built this system where people had to wear a big exoskeleton. They could literally reach out and grab something that felt real, even though it wasn't there, and interact with real objects. And so that was my very first experience going back 30 years.
Indeed, I saw a movie, actually. There is a film on the internet, or YouTube maybe, that shows the applications, right? And it were pretty amazing because the idea was really like, how can we augment, the capabilities of someone who is going to be in the operating room? Or there were some multiple applications that were envisioned back then, right? Of course, there was not enough technology, computer power yet to develop further. But then, tell me a little bit about nowadays. Nowadays, the Metaverse became very popular. Now everybody's talking and hyping it because Facebook, when they changed its name to Meta and announced, right, that they would create a platform and that this was the biggest, innovation, blah, blah, blah. And, everybody felt like the people who knew a little bit of the history, or at least about Second Life, or say, wait a minute, and then again, Facebook's problems weren't going to be solved by this new announcement. Actually, they could be made worse between us who have been following the mishaps of social media, power in political processes. So tell me a little bit, because you say in one of your essays recently on TechCrunch that there is the marketing hype and there is the people who actually believe that the Metaverse can be very, very useful and transformative. And you fall in the second camp. So tell us a little bit, how do you see that happening now?
Yeah, so the Metaverse is really a new word for something that goes back 30 years or even a little bit more. I would say that the hype around Metaverse is really talking about something a little different, which is this transition from flat media to immersive media. Right now, we have an ecosystem where we interact with flat media, meaning we are observers from the outside looking at information in the third person. And the transition is really to an ecosystem where we are in the inside looking at information in the first person. And so that is, the metaverse in the broadest sense. Specifically, when people say the word metaverse, they're really talking about a persistent world where you can have large numbers of simultaneous users who all have a shared sense of mutual presence. And as you said, that goes back, the very first metaverse, I think, was called Active Worlds, goes back to like 1995. Then there was There in like 1999, and then Second Life was the first that really got populated in the early 2000s with up to 1 million people. And so it's not new, but now here we are 20 years later, and it suddenly is this big deal. And so what's different now? What's different now is instead of it being startup companies pushing this, now it's major corporations that are pushing the metaverse. And now we have to think about, okay, we're going to have these worlds, and they could be controlled by corporations. And so my biggest concerns are the technology of the metaverse is amazing, so much magical potential, but if they are corporate controlled platforms like Facebook, like Twitter, like the current social media platforms, then we have to start to worry, do we take the dangers of social media and bring it into the metaverse? And when you really start thinking about how that happens, it becomes potentially way more dangerous, way more damaging, way more destabilizing than even the dangers we've seen in social media so far.
Yes, it seems like that's what we are looking at, right? Governance, data governance is going to be becoming even more important. Some say that, we shouldn't be regulating so much innovation in these companies, but we have seen that, in fact, we can't, these advertising models that gather so much data, and then the consumer or the citizen doesn't know what happens to this data is a challenge for democracy and democratic processes around the world. So there was a little bit also, now you have a company, Unanimous AI. Tell us a little bit about the work you do right now, and what kind of clients do you have? Because I have seen you worked for the United Nations. You did a project with them, with one of the UN agencies.
Unanimous AI is an artificial intelligence company. We make a piece of software called Swarm. Swarm is a really different approach to artificial intelligence. Most AI companies are out there using AI to replace people with algorithms, and we use AI to connect groups of people together to amplify their group intelligence. And so groups of people can be anywhere in the world. They log into Swarm, and they can make decisions, make predictions, make forecasts, make assessments together as a system. And it's called Swarm because it's built on algorithms modeled after the biological principle of swarm intelligence. And so swarm intelligence is the reason why birds flock and fish school and bees swarm. They're smarter together. They make better decisions together. Whereas we humans make really bad decisions in groups. In large groups of people they'll stagnate, they'll entrench, they'll fall into polarized camps. Whereas Swarm brings groups together and allows them to basically amplify their group intelligence. And so the United Nations is a customer of Swarm. They've been using Swarm for over a year now. It's a particular group in the United Nations, the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and they use Swarm to forecast famine risk around the world, food insecurity risk. And so it's really interesting application. So they have groups of experts that are all over the world. Those experts could be in 20 different countries, and those experts might know different things about different countries. They might know the politics, they might know the economics, they might know the climate situation. They'll come into Swarm, and they'll then forecast what's the likelihood that there'll be food insecurity in Haiti over the next 18 months. And they'll work together and as an amplified intelligence using AI to combine their knowledge and wisdom and insight, they'll reach these optimized forecasts. and they've been using it, and it's a great application, and it shows what how we can use AI not to replace people, but to make groups smarter. And the United Nations is a great example. We've been doing we've done a big project with Stanford University with their medical school, where they've had groups of doctors form swarms and make diagnoses. And what we've seen with Stanford in published studies is that when groups of doctors make diagnoses, they can reduce their diagnostic errors by up to 30% when they work together this way. So it's really about using AI to amplify the collective wisdom of groups. And it can be used for anything from sales forecasting and marketing to predicting famines or doing medical diagnoses.
Thank you for watching the UN Brief, and don't forget to subscribe.